Hello and welcome to Penguin TV. It is recorded by George Efelis, aka Whiffy Penguin, and you can follow me on Twitter at Whiffy Penguin. Penguin TV is hosted by PureMTGO.com and sponsored by MTGOTraders.com. Get an 8% discount off all orders over $50 when paying with PayPal or credit card. And you can check out CapeFearGames.com and get an extra 20% off when trading paper for digital. Enjoy the videos. Hello everybody, and welcome to Penguin TV with Welder Workshops. So, I've been away for a little while. Part of the reason was that I was just burnt out of playing Magic. I had hit the Innistrad queues pretty hard. Ended up doing about 20 sealed decks in 2 weeks. And then Classic just wasn't firing when I was available. It's great that Classic has been firing during the week, but I haven't been able to get into the events during the week, and then for some reason it just wasn't firing on the weekends while I was available. So, and then on top of all of that, my computer broke down. So that's why there's been a little hiatus from the Penguin TVs and my lovely voice here. But this week we have a workshop deck with Goblin Welders. This is the first time I have done a workshop deck in daily events, so hooray for that. And the reason that I have, finally pulled the trigger and played workshop in an event is because of Goblin Welder. This is one of my most favorite cards in Magic. I'm not sure what it is. I never really played Slaver with it when in Vintage, and I never really played it in Extended when it was amazing. And when it was in Standard, it wasn't so hot. I played back then, but Goblin Welder wasn't the best card in Standard. But now in Classic, he's finally starting to earn his own. I don't know if we're ever going to get Slaver decks to work because A, we don't have power, and B, even if we did have power, I'm pretty sure that Vintage has moved beyond Slaver as being an acceptable choice. Anyone who's not familiar with the term Slaver, it's for the card Mindslaver, which is a 6-cost artifact. 4 in sacrifice, you control the next player's, you control target player's next turn. And basically what you would do is you would use Goblin Welder and a cheap source of artifacts like, I don't know, not Triskelion, but Tetravis, the guy who makes 1/1 tokens. And now maybe even Thopter Assembly would be the card you would use. But yeah, you would just take every turn. This was before Time Vault became awesomeness. And people still use it, after Time Vault was errated, but it's fallen out of favor in the last 2 or 3 years. But anyway, we're talking about Classic, and we're talking about a workshop deck. So to start off with, we've got the namesake card here, Workshop. It's a 3-mana land that you can only use to play artifacts. You can't activate abilities, you can just cast artifacts. In a deck with, 21 lands and 4 artifacts, or 4 non-artifact cards, that's okay. We can front-end cast 35 cards, and we just can't use Workshop on Staff of Domination activations. Following up the reusable Black Lotus, we have Tolarian Academy, which in a deck with 35 artifacts is, 38 artifacts, is pretty amazing. It's restricted for a reason. After that, we've got Ancient Tomb as a 4 of, and City of Traders as a 2 of, for lands that produce more than 1 mana. City of Traders is terrible, and if we had Moxes, we probably would not be running it. But it is a 2-mana land, and sometimes you just need a 2-mana land. Rounding out these guys, we have our Busted Acceleration. Soul Ring, Mana Vault, Mana Crypt, they're in a lot of decks. because they're just awesome. Mox Opal has made a couple of splashes in Classic, most notably in Control blue decks and shop decks. I like Mox Opal in this deck because it helps us get red mana for our Goblin Welder on top of our 5 red sources. So we have 6 red sources altogether. And every now and then, Mox Opal just does... Mox Opal is a Mox every now and then. You won't get to use it on the first turn, but if you go, like, turn 1, land, Soul Ring, Mana Vault, or Mana Crypt, and another artifact, on turn 2 it's going to give you another mana, and you're going to get up to 4, 5, 6. You're gonna have access up to 6 mana, maybe 7 or 8 if you haven't tapped your Mana Vault, and then more if you play another land. So that's kind of why I like Mox Opal. Speaking of red, we've got 2 mountains, and I've got to assume that the reason we've got 2 mountains is for Ghost Quarters, so that we have something to go and fetch when they Ghost Quarter us. And then we've got 3 Great Furnace, which has dual synergy with both Goblin Welder and Metalworker. And I say the reason I assume that there are mountains in the deck is because this is not my build. This is Goat314's deck. If you're interested in, how this deck plays out in my article, you should go check out his articles on Pure Mtgo, the Bad Bleats. I feel like he's written at least half a dozen, and they're all on the Welder workshop deck and how he's been tuning it over the last couple of months. Pretty good. I read it. I like it. But I love pretty much anything Classic that is legible. So, not a slam against Goat, because I do like them, but I'll read just about anything Classic. So after these lands, we've got our specialty suite. We've got 3 Wastelands and a Strip Mine. Anyone who's familiar with Legacy or Vintage or Classic should know why these cards are good. Anyone who is familiar with these formats should also be scratching their head at 3 Wasteland. Most decks that are going to be running Wastelands, they run 0, 2, or 4. It could be that Goat only wanted 4 slots, but as we'll see as we go through the deck tech, I can find room for a 22nd land in the 4th Wasteland. And then we've got Crucible of Worlds, which not only helps us get them under a Waste Lock, which is a little less likely since we only have 4 Land Destroyers and then 1 Crucible. What I find it more likely to do is help us recover against Wastelands and Strip Mines. One of the problems you can have while playing Workshops is that you throw out all these spheres, then your opponent starts hitting your lands and making their land drops, and then you can't cast spells. So that's another little addition for Crucible. It doesn't do either particularly amazing since there's no fetch lands, but it does help the deck. And there's a Buried Ruin. Buried Ruin is an interesting card. It is a really, really slow Goblin Welder, but with Crucible of Worlds, it lets us go infinite in the long game. Is the easiest way to put it. I like it. I used it in my round 4, and it helped me immensely. It's the only time it came up, but I'm a sucker for Misers. That one-of card that just wins you the game when you draw it. And sometimes Buried Ruin is that card. Sometimes Crucible is that card. Sometimes Spina of Vishal is that card, but we'll get to that. So that's our mana base. 22 lands, 4 mana artifacts, and then Crucible. Or 21 lands, I'm sorry. I feel like it should be 22 lands. After the lands, we've got our spheres. This is what makes Workshop Workshop. 4 Thorns, 4 Lodestone Golems, and then 3 Sphere of Resistance. All of these cards make everything else cost 1 extra, with the exception that Lodestone doesn't affect artifacts, and Thorn doesn't affect creatures. Sphere affects everything, and then Trinisphere, aka 3-ball, gets everything. and a turn 1 3-ball is rough. It's not an automatic win. I've beaten the Trinisphere on turn 1. I've lost to the opponent when I played Trinisphere on turn 1, but it's pretty close to a game over. Especially if your workshop gets to stick around. And then following that up, we've got Chalice of the Void. Chalice of the Void is really good against the blue decks that are going to be running Nature's Claim and Steel Sabotage and Hurkyl's Recall. These allow you to make sure that your things stay on the table. However, as we get through, we're going to see the good old Chalice on the chopping block. A little foreshadowing, I'll drop it here. So, after all of the sphere effects, we've got a little bit more disruption with Phyrexian Revoker, which can hit any non-land card, whether it's Time Vault, a Planeswalker, Qasali Pride Mage, mana creatures, and on top of all of that, he attacks for 2. He hits Metalworker, although with us having Metalworker, that's probably not likely to happen. But yeah, Phyrexian Revoker is a pretty innocuous looking card when it came out, but has turned out to be a pretty potent role player in the classic metagame. Not only in workshop decks, but as well as in fish decks, allowing them to have an any color bear that turns off pretty much everything. The only downside about Phyrexian Revoker is that you cannot turn off Bazaar of Baghdad. But you can't have everything. If you really need to turn off Bazaar of Baghdad, you can use Pithing Needle, which, by the way, has almost disappeared since the inception of Phyrexian Revoker with the release of, what is this? Is this Scars of Mirrodin? I believe it's Scars of Mirrodin. Could be Mirrodin Besieged. Yep, this is Scars. So, with the release of Mirrodin Besieged. And then we've got Spina vishal. 7 mana is a lot, but sometimes you just have a mountain of mana, especially if there's a Tolarian Academy on the table. And just getting a one-shot out of it is good enough. Being able to recur it with Goblin Welder is insano. I haven't had this happen ever, but I have had it happen against me, and while it's slow, killing one spell or one permanent a turn, even if it's lands when they're under spheres, is just amazing. It's hard to come back if you get this going. Speaking of Goblin Welder, we've got a playset. I may have mentioned it, I may not have. This is the main reason I'm playing this deck, because it's got Goblin Welders. Love me some Goblin Welder. So, a good reason to play Welder. It helps you get rid of Blightsteel Colossus, which is a problem against workshop decks. It helps you against Nature's Claims and counterspells by being able to, A, not be targeted by Nature's Claim, and B, get out there fast before counterspells have a chance. Or, since it only costs 1 mana, you can try, baiting them with a Thorn or something, and then playing the Welder once the Thorn has been countered. Or not countered, as the case may be. So we've got these chalices over here. And a lot of the time in the event that I played and in the games that I practiced with this a couple of weeks ago, Chalice of the Void would come out, and then Goblin Welder would sit in my hand, with no way for me to remove Chalice of the Void. Or, for the best matchup where it shines the most against a workshop mirror, almost all of them are jamming 3 or 4 Phyrexian Revokers. It is hard to win with a 1/1 Goblin that does nothing when they have a Phyrexian Revoker on the table. I resolved this guy at least once in a workshop matchup in this article and still lost, so there you go. Chalice of the Void, I don't like you in this deck because we're running Goblin Welder. I think that I might be willing to give up the percentage points against blue by taking out Chalice of the Void, because also Chalice of the Void is pretty useless against workshops. You side this guy out. But I would like to try running 3 or 4 Lightning Bolts, and then if it were a playset of Lightning Bolt, the Spina vishal would probably come out for the 4th Wasteland, And if it were 3 lightning bolts, then the 4th chalice would come out for Wasteland. And I'm not sure if I would move chalice to the sideboard or not. I suppose there are some decks I would want chalice and I would not want Goblin Welder, but I have to assume that that is only against Dredge. So yeah, there's my reason for wanting to get rid of chalice. Wanting to replace it with lightning bolt is a few-fold. First of all, it gets rid of Fire Extinguisher Revoker. It gets rid of Goblin Welder on the other side. It gets rid of Lodestone Golem. It gets rid of Slash Panther. It gets rid of everything, just about. Whatever Lightning Bolt can't get rid of, Goblin Welder usually takes care of. If they're resolving Emrakuls and Terastodons, well, then you're probably screwed. Unless you have out this handy-dandy Staff of Domination. So our win conditions are 2 Batterskulls and 2 Wormcoil Engines. And I really like the amount of life gain in this deck, especially with the fact that every now and then Ancient Tomb is going to eat up anywhere from 6 to 14 of your life. I've played games with workshops in the past where I've been at 2, and it's from tapping Ancient Tomb 9 times. So any life gain is fantastic. And the fact that they are so hard to kill just makes it even easier. A lot of people may look at Batterskull and be like, oh, you can't return it to your hand because you've got Mishra's Workshops. But they forget that we have Tellurian Academy, we have Crucible of Worlds, we have Ancient Tombs, all these mana artifacts. 5 mana is not an impossible feat to return to your hand. And then Wormcoil also replaces itself. And Wormcoil has some synergy with Goblin Welder. And then lastly, we've got Metalworker and Staff of Domination. Anyone who listens to the Yawgmoth Soap Opera podcast will know that myself, Zach, and Andy are all astounded that people will play Metalworker and not play at least 1 Staff of Domination. The combo is an instant win. You do need to have 3 artifacts in your hand, but you win the game. And for anyone who's not sure how you win the game, if you have 3 artifacts in your hand, you tap Metalworker for 6 mana. Then you untap Metalworker for 3 mana with the Staff of Domination, and then untap Staff of Domination for 1 mana with the Staff's ability, netting you 2 mana in the process. Then you tap your Metalworker, untap it, untap the Staff, tap, blah blah blah, make 1,000,000 mana, and then you start drawing your deck. Once you've gotten to a comfortable point, you lay out all of your spheres, and because you have 1,000,000 mana, you lay out all of your spheres so that they can't interact, and then you lay out your Wormcoils and your Batterskulls and your Lodestones. Yes, you have to give up the turn, but there's no way they're winning if they weren't already going to win. So, yeah, there you go. One problem with this is that it is very time-consuming. Most of the people in the Classic community will scoop, just like they will scoop to a Time Vault Voltaic Key combination. However, that is not true of everyone, and if this is something you want to be able to utilize when it comes up, I would recommend practicing it. Practicing the infinite loops on Mtgo will save you an invaluable amount of time when you're playing in events. At one point, I was able to get, I'm not sure what kind of crazy combo it was. It was Bomberman with Auriok Salvagers, Lion's Eye Diamond, and a Spell Bomb. That is a huge amount of clicking to get 20 damage with a Spell Bomb. And God forbid you actually have to draw cards with like a life gain Spell Bomb to find the Pyrite Spell Bomb. But I was able to practice it enough when it was a relevant deck that I could dome someone from 20 in 5 minutes. 5 minutes sounds like a lot, but when you calculate all the counting in there, 5 minutes isn't too much. And there's a tip on how to play, infinite combos for anyone who is curious. Practice in the casual solitaire mode. Moving on to the sideboard, as I feel I've rambled on way too long already. We've got a pretty healthy amount for Dredge, with 4 ley lines and 3 Tormods. And one of the things that people may not realize is that if you lay down a Graveyard Hate piece, and then you lay down a Thorn, or a Sphere, it is almost impossible for them to get 2 mana to Nature's Claim you. 4 of their 12 lands don't tap for mana. 2 of them come into play tapped. 4 of them bounce whenever you tap them for mana. And then you're running Wastelands and Strip Mine. So chances are they're not going to get to 2 mana, and it's going to be impossible for them to get to 3 if you get 2 Spheres down. I like the chances for games 2 and 3 with this deck, or with this sideboard against Dredge. Moving over here, we have Oath of Druids / Workshop Hate with the Duplicates. Here we have Workshop / Fish Hate with the Triskelions. And then we've got a couple of utility cards that are good against a lot of things. But that's the deck. And as I said, if you're interested, you should check out Goat's articles, The Bad Bleats. And in the event today, we played against Hermit Druid / Panther Workshops, a Black-Red Past in Flames Storm deck, and a Blue-Red Standstill Snapcaster Mage deck. I'll see you for round 1. Bye.